Thanks for joining us, everyone. We will get started here shortly. I'll go ahead and kick things off as we're waiting for more people to join. Thank you all for joining us today for another Converged User Group Community Hour webcast. The purpose of these community hours are to virtually connect everyone with other Converged User Group members. They are held every third Thursday at our new time, 12 p.m. Eastern, to discuss a variety of topics based on member interests. And this April, we have a special feature with a second community hour following this presentation 2 weeks from today. If you've missed any of the past couple of community hours, they are posted on our website under the resources page, so feel free to go in and check out any of those event recordings. In case this is your first time attending a Converged User Group meeting, Converged is a customer-led community connecting members exploring Dell converged and hyper-converged solutions to share best ideas, best practices, and experiences. For today's webcast, please use the Q&A function for any questions, or you can use the chat for discussion with your peers. Our speakers today will respond to questions during or at the end of today's discussion. As mentioned, your feedback helps us plan future sessions, so please participate in our end of the event survey and polls that we will launch throughout today's webcast. Completion of the survey will enter you into a drawing to win some great prizes. So with that, I will pass it along to David Giesecke.
All right, thank you very much, Hollis. And Matt, I've got you, and Brian, I've got you there. Can I get a thumbs up? Can you hear me? Panelists, all right.
Loud and clear.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
Awesome. Folks, thank you very much for joining us again for another episode of the Converged Community Hour. We've got a fantastic one for you today. And before we get started, I want to thank our sponsors, Dell Technologies and VMware. Apparently, I've been batting 500 with that, so I want to get it out of the way and I don't forget them. They're making this possible, and we really appreciate it. Thanks. And thank you for joining us. Boy, it's been over a year. I don't want to dwell on it, but thankfully we've had the community hours, and thank you for taking the time to put a little bit more Zoom into your day, but share your comments, your thoughts, your questions, your lessons learned, and just be not socially distant, but socially connected and physically distant. Thank you again. Fantastic session for you today. Joining me as my special co-host is Converged User Group Vice President, Matt Wakefield. My usual co-host, President of the Converged User Group, Jonathan Toulon, is on assignment. Joining us today, we have a very special guest, Brian Brindley, Senior Lead of Integration and Technology at Click. But more importantly, in this case, not to belittle your day job, Brian, but he is the Boomi User Group Head Customer Advisor. This is a fantastic opportunity for us. Boomi is one of the Dell Technologies user communities, as is Converged, as is VMUG, as is the Unified Workspace folks. We've got a lot of them out there. We're getting a little cross-platform opportunity in sharing through technology. So thank you, Brian, for joining us. Really appreciate it. Matt, thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Great to be here. It's great to have you guys. I do want to encourage folks in the audience, if you have questions, please use the chat, please use the Q&A. I'll reiterate that, and we'll get started. Brian, we brought you on because talking with JT and Matt earlier, the Boomi User Group, we've done a lot of kind of collaborative things in person in the past. This is an opportunity where we'd love to bring the members a little bit more information on what is Boomi, specifically for the CI and HCI folks. What do they need to know about Boomi that they might not know that can help them in infrastructure? So could you start us off with a little overview, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to steal the screen sharing real quick here to grab this because unfortunately, I'm not very good at selling Boomi. Can you guys see the Boomi page here?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay, so Boomi in itself is what they refer to as an integration platform as a service. It started out as primarily a cloud-to-cloud tool, so those that needed, to connect these cloud services between the different systems. And one of their unique models is they have this concept of atoms and molecules that are on premise or on cloud or can run pretty much anywhere. That allow you to connect and run executions on your local managed network without that data never ever leaving your platform or what you have control over. A lot of iPaaS solutions send that data up through the cloud, and you've got to worry about lots of challenges from there, from opening firewall rules. And one of their unique features is they give you the ability to host that where you need it, when you need it, in the geographical locations that make sense for you, and then allows you to connect to all types of third-party systems without having to punch through the firewall outside of the traditional, basic web connectivity. So they articulate it much better than I do, but basically, it supports event-driven architectures, databases. You can pull analytics, IoT connectors through the Boomi platform, all managed from the cloud. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the runtime itself running on your local infrastructure or on their hosted infrastructure or their Atom cloud. So yeah, that's the elevator pitch for Boomi.
All right, cool. How long have you been involved in the Boomi user group? When did you get involved in Boomi?
So I've been using Boomi for the past 7 years now. The user group is about 3 years old now. I saw it from its inception. I'm in South Florida, so I worked with one of the group leads that was down here. The community lead was Andrew Michalov, so I got involved with him and started getting connected. And I drink the Kool-Aid. I love it. It's such a great platform. When I first brought it on, it was one of those, well, Boomi's making so much noise. There's no reason we shouldn't be looking at it, and to see it evolve this far has been a great experience for me personally. They listened to our feedback, and I come from an operations background, so I've had a unique perspective on this versus the traditional development. So I've worked through the development world of the challenges where deficiencies there and the operational side, and seeing it merge to the enterprise platform is been quite a journey.
Cool. That's great, Brian. Thanks. Matt, when we were talking earlier, you had some very interesting thoughts on Boomi and what companies can do with it, or how to think, I'll call it, out of the box with Boomi from an infrastructure perspective. Can you share with us a little bit of what you're doing, or kind of how folks should be thinking about Boomi if they're not already?
Sure. Thanks, Dave. First of all, how's the audio? Just double check on that.
It's a lot better than it was. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so, in some of our conversations, right, we've had conversations with a lot of members, and certainly conversations I've had with peers and other enterprises. There's often this need to connect systems, that aren't necessarily naturally designed to talk to each other. And I think there's an opportunity for lots of folks who are looking for maybe that glue, right? That glue that can connect, systems that we traditionally think of as infrastructure-based systems with other applications, right? And so we were having some interesting conversations about, many organizations are moving to SaaS applications for some of their key systems, and this represents a way, perhaps if organizations have a need to integrate some of that data into either their automation space or their operation space. It might be an interesting way to think about doing that, either through just the low code environment or some of the API interfaces. And I think we were talking about an example that, VMware themselves are a large user of Boomi, and they have some material out there that describes how they've used Boomi in their organization to integrate with what we traditionally think of as just infrastructure automation tools, of which there are lots, and everybody's got their particular favorites. But there's an opportunity, if we have a need to go outside the bounds of some of that traditional infrastructure automation, to look at a tool like Boomi to bring some of that outside data in.
Yeah, very cool. The couple of things here that I'm noticing I missed, so we'll get back to them though. But Brian, when you're working with folks in and your infrastructure folks, and Matt, you guys were talking. Can you give an example of where you might pull this in, and how that might help deliver the infrastructure automation level?
Yeah, one of the great use cases. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Brian. No, absolutely. Go ahead.
No, some of the great use cases is, connecting the on-premise and the cloud tools. I mean, that's one of the strengths of all of these iPaaS solutions. Everybody seems to be getting more and more SaaS services, and the biggest challenge is getting that data out of that SaaS platform into something that's a common infrastructure functionality. So when you think of like auditing or compliance or just general auditing to see what your impact is of PII or just GDPR, et cetera. It's very challenging to do that when you have SaaS services and you're relying upon just whatever reports whoever's responsible for that platform that you have no visibility into, but you're responsible for getting connectivity to that, and shipping data and online services that run agents on your platforms, like Datadog or something like that, dumping that data, pulling that data from services, and then merging that into a common tool that really ties everything together from an infrastructure side. That's kind of where I see some of the strong suits. I mean, at the end of the day, it's integration, right? Pulling data between the systems, and Matt brought up it's low to no code solutions. That's the future, right? And so.
Right, Matt.
Yeah,
you go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, we some of the examples I think that come to mind are, perhaps HRIS systems. We're seeing a lot of HRIS systems move to SaaS, and oftentimes in integration there may be a need to integrate organizational data, hierarchies, in the organization, and information that's stored in an HRIS. It's become super common. I think lots of folks are familiar with tools like ServiceNow, Salesforce for contact management. Those tools don't necessarily have easy ways to quickly and easily pull data out, and whereas previously you may have had to do some kind of import, export, export and then import into something. A tool like Boomi offers the ability to just go out and grab that data as necessary, if it's something that is valuable to the particular kind of integration or workflow that you're trying to do. So,
yeah.
The tools like Boomi popped up as there was a move to the SaaS world, and everybody realized I've got to have some way to integrate with these, and rather than going down a particular vendor's API set, you can use something that's a little more agnostic and a common interface.
Yeah, your ServiceNow is a pretty classic example, and one of the great use cases of Boomi is getting closer to that event-driven architecture. So instead of having the bulk reporting that is usually in traditional automation, doing bulk and then reconciliation on a time-based schedule, you can get closer to real time. And with these tools, you can get plugged into events that happen closer to your connecting to Azure AD, or pulling directly from when events happen in Workday, and federating that down to service desk, such as a termination, right? Terminate, cancel ServiceNow, cancel an AD, all from Workday in literally a few clicks. We actually have built up a couple of proof of concepts, and we brand new platforms we've never connected with before. We had them up and running in about 15 minutes. So it's been a nice, easy, intuitive interface. And running on a platform that we already had, right? We didn't have to build out, some new tool that was specific to that platform or specific to that, use case.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting stuff as far as getting productivity up and getting the automation going. There were a couple things I want to go back to because we had some polls to involve the audience, and I missed the first one. So we're going to skip the first question and go straight to the second question. Maybe we'll come back to the first question, but I think Hollis is going to pull up the poll. Here we go. Thank you, Hollis. So yeah, this makes sense. We're talking about Boomi, but let's figure out, does the audience where are they in what they know about Boomi? So folks, if you can go ahead and answer that, we'll get some answers there. Hollis, monitor that and let us know when it looks like it's time to wrap up. And then we can talk to that. Matt, I thought there was we'll also ask folks where they are in the infrastructure journey. Okay, cool. Scott, thanks. You're doing the training. Fantastic. I guess the other thing we can do quick here is, Hollis, if you got the results, why don't you share those results? And I'm going to see how good you are at Zoom gymnastics. Can you go back to the first question and let's get a sense of what CI HCI products folks own out there? All right, yeah, so it looks like, if I'm just glancing at this, early stage folks, early stages in awareness, certainly, it looks like. So cool.
Yeah, David, I think one of the things we talked about is this is, Boomi isn't really fit the mold of a tool that, a lot of our members, are solidly in the infrastructure space, and it's really not a tool set that's targeted at infrastructure. It's often, it often lives within, in a larger organization, probably lives within that part of the IT team that does middleware or does integration technologies or maybe database, depending on where organizations fit it. So it's a tool that people may have heard about, not necessarily sure where it's being used, but definitely not something that I think is often targeted at infrastructure. I think what, as certainly as Brian and I were talking about it, it's one of those things where maybe not targeted there, but there might be some just really interesting use cases if it's a tool that's already in your organization. It might be worth just finding a little bit more out about it, if and see if it has any applicability to the kind of work that the infrastructure teams are doing.
Yeah, Matt, I think you were saying that it's not a tool that you would go out as an infrastructure team and purchase for automation. That said,
yeah, correct.
There's a good chance that your enterprise might already have a license. So as you're going down your automation journey, this might be a very helpful tool for you. And it could be very beneficial to go find the folks who are working with Boomi and start those conversations, develop those relationships internally. I loved the point that you said, I think, Matt, your guys are doing. Well, one, it's really neat that you were talking about how you had somebody on your team who's interested in learning more about Boomi, and you encouraged him to go do it, and he was digging it. I think that's one thing that you told me. The other thing that you told me is, if you're automating a spin up of a VM, self-service or something like that, but at some level it needs, director approval or VP approval or something like that. You were tagging into like service or Workday to ServiceNow using Boomi, so that the way I interpreted it, it was like soft coding in Excel rather than hard coding in a cell. So if that person happens to change, it's still the position maintains the approval authority. Do you want to talk about those a little bit?
Yeah, sure. It was a use case example that we're not actually doing, but an example of something that you could do. And yeah, that was that was one of the cases I think we talked about was, maybe in your organization you have some need, some organizations like to build really simple workflows and other organizations like really complicated ones, right? And if your complication in your workflow is you need 3 layers of approval and it has to follow up, say an organizational hierarchy, oftentimes, if you're a company that uses a SaaS application like Workday or any of the others that are out there, that information probably is stored in Workday in some kind of a reporting relationship structure, right? So if you have that kind of a use case where you've got to have a workflow that encompasses that information about who reports to who's the next sign off on an approval, that might be a great use case for something like Boomi, where you don't necessarily have to drag that data down into some other local database or make it part of your automation. You may be able just to go tap that data when you need it, right? You say, I'm building the workflow. this person asked for it. I need to get approval from their 2 levels of management, right? So let me go, first off, find who that next person is, and then, walk it, find who the person after that is. That's a great example of, something that probably could be a low code kind of scenario with Boomi. If you've already got an integration to that SaaS HRIS system, might be very easy to use that, to replace something that might be kind of convoluted and difficult to get otherwise. It's going to involve some data extract or some other custom API call kind of situation. So I think that was a great example. There's other, you can kind of just think through all the different, lots of folks have all kinds of automations to do all kinds of things. Whether it's contact information, who knows, case management kinds of applications, lots of scenarios where it might be valuable.
Yeah, cool. Brian, any comments on that? Because I want to get the poll soon too, so we can get that up maybe.
Yeah, no, Matt brought, hit some really good points. Keep the data where it lives, keep it closer to real time. The more you have to extract and replicate that data over and over again, you increase the ability of, increase the chances of having mismatches of data staleness, and then in addition to that, Boomi in itself is platform agnostic, right? So we've got connectors. So when you have things like Service Desk, as an example, has its own level of automation, right? The connectors and the capacity it has, or the abilities that it has built in, you are completely dependent upon whatever they have available to you, And so Boomi being more of a platform, it's, anybody who's worked with any type of RPA tool. Yeah, I think we lost Matt again.
Well, we'll let him dial in.
Okay. Yeah, anybody who's worked with, any of those RPA tools, you can see things are getting much more consistent across the platforms, and tools like Boomi are already well versed in the enterprise capacity you need. So if something's going to connect to something, like an HRIS system, you can know and you can use the tools that Boomi has certified that they have certain levels of compliance to say that, we do validation, we have controls around play, we can give you the security and the comfort that you need, along with the alerting and monitoring and reliability that you expect from an enterprise tool, which you may not be able to get from some level of, individual automation from the individual components of each platform. So thinking of it that level, there's some good opportunity. And again, reusing what you may already have in your organization for a low cost investment of a connector would be significantly cheaper than building up a whole infrastructure specific automation platform. Not that it doesn't replace that, but it does, gives you the ability to augment what you already have and get, closer to the system of record, closer to the real-time events, and then, tying that into infrastructure needs. Another example we spoke about was feature switching, right? If we have a scenario where we get bombarded with a load test, right? Can we hook into a large amount of requests and fire off automation to spin up and have more elasticity to the requests coming in as opposed to the load on the server, right? If we see 10,000 requests come in, it may not blow up our server resources yet, but we can start the process of spinning up and being a little more elastic. So again, hooking that into other automation tools where Boomi is the catalyst.
Very cool. Looks like we got Matt back with us. I think we had a poll out there about the infrastructure. There. Okay, so very good. Thank you, Hollis. Looks like folks on average are in the middle of the early to middle days of automation. And it's great to know. This is a great time, I think, to kind of throw some ideas out there in the chat and see what other people are doing. Scott, I think your scenario is really neat. This sounds similar. Matt, was this similar to what your guy was doing? Or is that
my guy?
All right. Thanks, Scott. No, that's fantastic. This is neat. I mean, but what I thought was fantastic about it is you guys discovered this, you supported him to go learn this stuff, and then now he's empowered to go find like other things that you guys can do and benefit from.
Right. Yeah, I think one of the interesting things that with Boomi is this whole, it basically has a citizen developer model. Not every organization chooses to implement that way, but I think that's certainly what Boomi kind of advises folks to do is, you have a an organization that manages the kind of the core pieces, and then you let a lot of the end state I think a lot of companies want to get to is you let a lot of different folks participate in the in building the connectors, because it is it is a low code kind of tool. You don't really have to become a super expert at a different language or a different coding mechanism. It's easy to learn, and once you have connectors for different endpoints, it's easy to connect them together.
And
it's consistent too.
Real easy at the VROPs and VRA for your automation. Is it talk nice, easy?
Well, that's a good question. I'm really interested to continue to see what VMware, and I think we could see some interesting things come out of the fact that they're a heavy internal user of Boomi, and obviously they have a vested interest in connecting to those particular tools, since they are their own tools. So it'd be really interesting to see how they continue to evolve that, and what kind of functionality they bring as they continue to use Boomi to integrate with things like VRA and the other vRealize tool sets.
The other thing the other thing to consider is everybody's going with the API first approach, right? It used to be the days of we would have your own tool sets. You had to use their tools because there was proprietary behind the scenes API access. And now the security has reached a level where they can start to expose it and start enabling hooking in third-party tools, which makes tools like Boomi or any other, integration or automation platform much more consistent. And, one of the things I praise a lot of the platforms, but in Boomi in specific, is they really take a lot of the behind the scenes logic away from you, right? So when I want to go connect to ServiceNow, right, I don't have to know all of the objects or how to really connect to ServiceNow. I just have to know what are my credentials to ServiceNow in our either test or production details, and I can start pulling the data in. I can start using those objects with really no intimate knowledge of ServiceNow at all, right? So if I've got scenarios that Scott was mentioning where ServiceNow, I want to check for service tickets, and I want to ping the service, super easy, and you don't really have to. You can do a lot of stuff with no code, and in general, you don't really have to know anything about the target systems if you understand the basics of how their connectors work, which, as Scott can probably attest to, is very, very straightforward.
Very cool. I like the we talked about automation. It feels like years now, but it also feels like automating infrastructure is a challenge. So Matt, what's going on? Why can't we just do it?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I just, having looked around and talking to a lot of folks in the industry, it's it's a combination of things, right? I think there are tool set challenges. You've got certainly a lot of preferences about, there are just philosophical debates to be had about how you approach some of those things and how you automate. And there's always I know some of the things we've gone through. Oftentimes, it's really about streamlining your process, right? So we've seen situations where you have to really it's really difficult to try to automate a process that isn't the best design process, right? So sometimes it's all about
standardize
processes first. Yeah, standardize your processes. The last thing you want to do is go automate something really overly complicated and non-standard, and that's a mess, right? You're just automating a mess, right? You don't want to do that. Yep. So I think for a lot of organizations, they're going to find that there's process work to be done before you start automating stuff, right? I think that's a really common place people find themselves. That would be my. I mean, there's lots of reasons why automation is tough, right? But that's certainly one of them. You've got
Yep.
lots of philosophical. You got preferences about tools. what tool in what place. I think a lot of organizations spend a lot of time debating, just tools, right? Which tool fits, those kinds of things. So lots of good answers to that question. I think it's different for everybody.
Well, thanks, Matt. It's funny how
that's a great graphic there that Brian.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
We just did a presentation about in the regional group about using the Boomi APIs to automate Boomi tasks, right? And at the end of the day, it's getting everybody to agree. At least my opinion, it's getting everybody to agree on what you're going to be allowed to do and what you're allowed to automate within the constraints of the comfort level of the organization of those that are executing the automation, right? And what's your rollback plan? Is it sufficient, and being comfortable to say, all right, let's let the systems take over, knowing that we're going to give it very clear instructions. So
yeah, it's funny how we kind of get to, and if JT were here, we continue on with it too. The infrastructure is kind of the easy part. It's the people and the processes that seem to be where the real challenge, and certainly the leadership can shine.
I think that's true.
Yeah, and just hit what I was going to do in the chat, folks. We've got two great experienced IT leaders here. If you've got questions, please, now is the time to pick their brains, or share some things, some experiences that you've been encountering, and maybe see if they've got some thoughts on whether they've been there before. And if we don't have questions, we could just schedule another 45 minutes for the Zoom and just go over and let people, really, really enjoy us. But I think what we'll probably do, if there aren't questions, guys, I really appreciate your time, and I think this is neat stuff. I'm glad on multiple levels how we were able to communicate with the Boomi user group and the CONVERGED user group. I think I'm hoping Scott is now a member of the Boomi user group. If he's not, he's aware of it, and he can go out and join.
Absolutely.
Someday soon, we'll all be in person again, and that'll be cool because we'll be able to, continue the cross-platform conversation and the automation conversation. It's clearly early, and I think one thing we might want to focus on or do a little thinking on how we can present the members is, are there some best practices on processes? So like if you want to automate, maybe we can talk about what are some of the kind of big hangups for the processes, and how do you streamline those, and how do you go about thinking about that? That might be fun to bring to folks down the road. And
yeah, Dave, I think it would be super interesting if we could find, maybe through the user group and the context, we might be able to, maybe we can tap into somebody within VMware, right, directly, that has some experience with what they're doing. I think, like we talked about, a lot of the, probably the majority of the members, the CONVERGED user group members, the kind of the central set of expertise is, we think, around VMware and HCI. And it's not, like I think we talked about earlier, this isn't naturally a tool that they're often exposed to, right? So as a future follow-up, it may be just really interesting to have VMware, if they're willing, do a presentation on what they've done, internally, and how they've. So I think that's with a lot of our members having a lot of VMware expertise and experience, I think that's the tool set that's of particular interest, or would be to a lot of this user group's members. So maybe that's an opportunity we could try to fish out for the future.
That's a great idea, and that's why you're the vice president of the CONVERGED user group. I love the way you think.
Yeah,
fantastic.
I mean, if you look at some of the use cases, they gain the ability to automate code deployments across environments, integrating with the VMware's VRCS, increasing their security and the regulatory compliance. That's part of the things I've seen, really using iPaaS tools versus some smaller individual niche automation. And I say Boomi because obviously that's my experience, but some of the niche tools doesn't have that level of auditing and compliance that everyone is expected when we reach that next level of enterprise requirements. So that'd be great to hear how they pull all that stuff out.
And also the process of going through streamlining your processes and cleaning up those convoluted things, doesn't that help security too in the long run? Like the loopholes happen when you take 3 lefts to make a right.
That's a good point. I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
The more complicated you make things, certainly, the more complicated your security ends up being in many cases.
Yeah. And then it just riddles it with holes. That's we can do that conversation another time. I think we don't have too many more folks here. If there's no more questions, we will wrap and thank everybody for attending. We do want to let everybody know that not only do we have another Converge Community Hour coming up in a couple weeks, we have Dell Technologies World coming up May 5th and 6th. So folks, if you haven't, everybody can attend because it is virtual. Register and share that because there's a lot of great stuff out there. And even more importantly, Matt Wakefield, what did you receive in your mailbox recently?
We're going to be demoing some VR, some interesting VR technologies for DTW, and should be rather interesting.
That's right. We are going to do our first ever Converge User Group virtual reality meeting. So Brian, I hope you can block your calendar for that. That's going to be the afternoon of May 5th. It's going to be really cool. I wish we could be in person, but I will tell you that if we can't be in person at Dell Tech World, being in the virtual reality world is going to be fantastic. So please mark your calendars. It's going to be a Converge User Group meeting unlike any you've seen before. And it's going to be fantastic. So register for Dell Tech World. Look for the email and register for the Converge User Group Virtual Reality or VR Lounge, we're calling it. And block your calendar from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on that's going to be Wednesday, May 5th. And if you register by April 26th, you can become eligible for a special giveaway. I wonder what that might be. Thanks, Brian. Fantastic to have you here. Great conversation. Thanks, Matt. As always, appreciate all the time that you give to the user group and the encouragement from your team and folks. Thank you all for attending. Really wish that we could be in person. We'll get there soon. In the meantime, if you have questions and we're not doing one of these, please reach out to member services at convergeusergroup.com. We'd love to hear what you want us to bring to the user group. This is your user group. So let us know and be engaged. Stay safe. And Hollis, are you out there?
I'm here. Yes. Thanks, David.
There we go.
Took a second to get to the unmute
Dell
button.
Technologies and VMware.
Yes, thank you everyone so much for joining. And as David mentioned, we've got a lot of exciting upcoming things for Converge. Definitely register for Dell Technologies World and register for our VR event. It's going to be great, very exciting. If you register by the 26th, you will be entered in for a special giveaway. So check out that registration page for more details. And as always, please please take our survey, post-event survey that I just put in the chat there, because you will also be entered in to win a little prize. And we greatly appreciate your feedback. But other than that, we are looking forward to having you join us, hopefully on April 29th for a DTW preview community hour.
That's right. We've got a great lineup of folks there. We're doing a reunion of Shannon Champion from Dell Technologies, CI and HCI product marketing, and Chris Stanley, who is now a board member for the Converge user group. And we'll do a preview. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about VR because it's just too fun to not talk about. Thanks,
Exactly.
everybody. Much appreciated.
Thank you,
Matt,
everyone.
Brian,
Thanks, everybody.
everybody.
appreciated.
Thanks, David.
Everyone
Thanks, everyone
be
who
safe.
attended.
Thanks.
Talk to you next month or in 2 weeks. Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.